Welcome to Invisible Me, a podcast centred around invisible health issues and the feeling of not being seen and heard. Yet here I am, standing right in front of you. Does this sound familiar? Well, come join the conversation. Share your experiences. Let's break down those norms and attitudes for the better. This is a safe space to chat with me, Pat. Welcome, Denise. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you here and talk about a very big subject that we don't hear about very often. So welcome, Denise.
Hi, Pat.
Hello there. Can you tell folks listening in about, I'm going to say it, brain surgery?
I can.
Could you tell us how it all started and, literally,
Yes.
how does one know that something's wrong?
Well, I think sometimes it's very difficult to know things are wrong. And I think sometimes the GP doesn't always realise that something's wrong because there's lots of symptoms that can relate to many things. And I think this is where initially I had the problem because in around late 2014, I started to suffer quite badly from severe headaches, very, very vivid dreams and just pain in my neck.
Yes.
And this continued for some time. And as it continued, I thought, well, I probably need to see the GP now.
Did you think it was like migraines or something else that was happening?
Yeah, possibly. I wasn't really sure. The only reason I thought it might be something different was because I'd worked with people with epilepsy in the past. And I was experiencing what I would call an aura.
Yes.
So initially I'd start with strange sensations in my tummy.
Okay.
Which felt like they were moving upwards. That's the only way I can describe it, really.
Yeah.
And then I'd start to get peculiar smells, visual instances, and felt very sort of out of it and faint.
Wow. Can I ask, when you say smells, was it like bad odours or was this normal odours but they were enhanced, or?
Yeah, it's strange really because I worked in a school.
Okay.
And my sort of visuals and smells, etc., were of the lab in school. And I would get quite
chemicals. Yes.
Yeah, chemical sort of smells and tastes. So I think in my heart of hearts, I thought, this is like epilepsy.
Okay.
But I didn't actually pass out. I just went very faint and I'd have to sit down or put my head down in order to wait until it passed. But that continued to get worse, which is when it concerned me more and I went to my GP.
Sure.
So
how often was this, like once a day, a couple of times a week, or you couldn't really put a number on it?
Oh, no, it was quite often.
Wow.
Really. Perhaps every other day, You
did well to last that long. I'd have been going to the doctor the very next day.
Oh, no, well, you see, I try not to. I think because I've been such a fit and healthy person in the past, I did lots of running, lots of going to the gym and sport.
Yes.
I just thought, well, it's just, I was at that age where we are on the change, etc.
Yes, people will say, it's the menopause, or it's migraines, or you're just tired. So we always justify something until then we give in and go to the doctor.
Until we find out different, So I then went to the GP, who, as you say, put it down to, I'd had a thyroid problem. He thought it might be the thyroid.
Okay.
Or he thought it might be the change. But there was no sort of suggestion that it was anything serious.
Right.
So we sort of monitored it for a while. And then I think it was Easter 2015, I went down to Plymouth to see my sister, and I was driving, and I just remember saying to Paul, because nobody had asked me not to drive, so I remember saying to Paul, I feel weird, I think I'm going to, I've got one of those funny things coming on, and he said, are you going to be all right? And I said, well, yeah, because I'd never, it just felt strange, but I mean, at the time I was on a dual carriageway, and I wasn't quite sure where to go.
Yeah.
And then apparently I just passed out at the wheel.
Oh, my goodness.
And Paul managed to get me across onto the hard shoulder part of the dual carriageway. And obviously, one sit had passed. I mean, he wasn't sure whether I was having a stroke but he noticed that my face was not right, etc. So he managed to get me into the passenger side of the car, and then he drove the rest of the way to my sister's. It didn't even occur to me to phone an ambulance or whatever, because usually they passed and then I'd have to sleep because it left me very fatigued.
Okay.
So when I got there, I just basically went to bed for a few hours and then I was fine.
You're fine. You're a phenomenal person. Honestly, I would have been A&E, ringing everybody. And Paul, you're a very calm and collected couple. That's impressive. Most of us would into panic mode.
Yeah, no, I didn't really.
Scary for him as well to observe
very
that.
Scary.
Very scary. Yeah. My heart goes out to both of you.
So obviously following that, I then went back to the GP and said, look, this has happened. And that's kind of when they started treating it a bit more seriously. And obviously I was told then I would have to stop driving until they'd got to the bottom of things.
Yeah.
So I had a variety of cardio investigations, etc.
Right.
And, I think I had sort of more episodes where I'd actually pass out.
Okay.
As well. And then eventually, I did tell my doctor what I felt, that, it was some form of epilepsy.
Because cardio, it's all about the heart, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And they're not looking at the brain at this point, because you said visuals as well as smells, and they're still looking for the less obvious. They were looking at the heart and other things.
Yes, yeah. Despite the fact that I felt in myself it was epilepsy.
Yes.
But then when they found there was no problems with the heart and things, then they sent me to see the consultant for epilepsy.
Okay.
And he diagnosed it as temporal lobe epilepsy initially, but it actually is gastric aura epilepsy.
Okay.
So it's where you get this, there is such thing where you get this funny feeling in your tummy. You then start to have an aura, which for me was in the lab and at school.
But very vivid visuals.
Very vivid. Yeah, it was really strange. So he did diagnose me, and that was in about the August of 2015. And then from there, he said, what we do is as sort of as a standard thing is sometimes with epilepsy, they can actually see by looking at the brain, they can look at patterns within the brain that can actually say, yes, it definitely is epilepsy. Yeah. Well, that's what they told me anyway,
yes.
Pat. So
you were in their hands. You just had to go with the flow.
Yeah.
But at least they were looking now at the brain.
Yes.
Epilepsy is very connected to brain activity. So they were in the right area. But it's almost a year, 2014.
Yes.
2015.
Yeah.
That's pretty slow to get.
A long time.
Even starting investigating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you on medication? Did they give you medication at this point?
No medication at that point.
Wow.
Until they'd done the scan, etc.
Right.
So I went for the scan. Paul and I had planned to go out for tea. And so I just thought, it was going to be a routine scan and blah, de blah. But when I went and had my scan, they asked me, well, it was strange because they did a scan and then they put contrast dye in. Now, at that time, I didn't realise they put contrast dye in because they can see more.
Yes.
So if I'd known that, then I probably would have realised that there was something that they weren't quite clear about.
Yeah, and they're really looking for more detail. But
yes, yeah.
I'm glad they did, though.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had the scan done and then they asked me to wait and see the doctor. And I think I sensed then that something wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
So I said, well, my husband's just outside. I'd like him to come in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Paul came in and that's when they delivered the bad news that there was a tumour. And they were quite concerned because the pressure in my brain was quite raised.
Goodness.
Which is possibly, I think, because the tumour had got to such a size, it was pressing on things, etc.
Hence the smells, the taste, the visions.
Yeah, and it's in your frontal lobe, which is sort of the emotional part of your brain.
Okay.
So, which would probably contribute to some of these things that were going on that were very strange. So they admitted me that night to monitor and gave me steroids to get the pressure down.
Okay.
And then within, I think it was probably a fortnight of that, I was in hospital having an operation to remove what they said was a large tumour. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you talk about large tumours, I mean, to me, you know, you think, oh, maybe the size of an apple or...
Yes.
But it was actually the size of a grape, but that's apparently big in brain tumour terms.
Yes.
So that's why I was having the issues, really.
That was quite speedy in the end. Speedy from scan to overnight.
Yeah.
To getting it removed. Can I just ask you, before you tell me a little bit more, can I just ask, it's a silly question really, because it's an obvious question. You must have been scared witless and very worried.
Yes.
Or was it just too many things happening? You just went with the flow? Were you in panic? How does somebody deal with that news? It's ginormous. And then in the brain.
Yeah, I think initially, Pat, it didn't really sink in straight away.
Yeah.
I think it was when I saw the consultant who told me that this was going to have to be removed.
Right.
That's when it sort of started to sink in.
Sure.
And I then started to have anxiety and panic attacks.
Completely justified. Yes.
Wow. And I just remember on one particular occasion when my sister came to see me, waking up one night, just getting into bed with her and just sobbing, because I just thought, why is this happening?
And very scary because you don't know the end or the outcome at that point. You don't know what's going to happen.
And at that point, although they believed it was non-cancerous, until you've actually had the biopsy, they can't really truly confirm that. So, they were sort of 98% sure that it wasn't cancerous. So, I mean, I then went and had my operation.
Which hospital? Was it Leeds? Was it anywhere else in the country?
Salford Royal, because at that time I was living in Manchester.
And that's a specialist area?
A specialist, yes.
Right.
Specialist hospital. So I had that done. And, it was really strange. I had to wait for the results to come back to say that, it's non-cancerous, which, thank goodness, it was non-cancerous.
Wonderful news, yes. Can I ask you just the aesthetics of it all for the listeners?
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had to have some of your hair shaved away or not?
No, I was very lucky.
Did they drill in? I'm asking you all things that I visualise in my head about drilling into the head to get to the brain.
Yeah, well, I'm a very strange person, I think, Pat.
But a fabulous person at the same time.
Before I had the brain operation, my brother had previously had, it was a different condition, but in the brain, and he'd had to have brain surgery.
I think we need to chat to him too.
Yes, I think you should.
Yes, we'll get him for another chat.
But he gave me a load of CDs on brain operations.
Really?
Not CDs, what do you call them now?
DVDs.
DVDs, yeah.
Oh, he wanted you to watch stuff.
I did watch them because then it prepared me for what I was going to have to go through and how it all affected you and things.
That's incredible.
And, well, I don't know whether everybody would do that, but I sort of felt the need to do it, really, as did my brother.
No, I like ignorance is bliss. Just don't tell me. Just do
it
and wake me up at the end.
You.
But no, we're all very different. And that's why it's good to talk about it. People need to hear how they can relate or not relate. Because we're all so different. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I was very fortunate that they were able to do the cut. It kind of goes from the front of my head to probably nearly to the back of my head.
Okay.
And they opened the head up, obviously, and then they have to remove the flap
Yes.
The bone flap that's within the brain.
Wowzers. Oh my goodness.
To be able to get to the brain.
Yes.
And to take the tumour out. So all I remember is I knew they told me I'd have my head stapled, which I did afterwards. Yes. And then I remember sort of waking up in hospital with this massive bandage thing on that was pulled so tight because it's to stop the brain swelling after the operation.
Oh my goodness!
And
right. These are the details we need to hear. This is it, because nobody knows.
No,
you've experienced it. Nobody knows. Hence us chatting about it.
I think I sometimes found that's the one thing I remember more than any other pain, because I just wanted to get the thing off because it was so uncomfortable. But that stayed on for a few days.
Right. So the relief of that being cut off.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
And maybe getting some sleep, maybe?
Yes, yeah. Although I think I was quite drugged up at the time.
That's good.
But they don't keep you in very long, which I was really surprised. I think I was only in a couple of days.
Wow.
And then you go home. So... yeah, and then what was very, very difficult for me was that my son was going off to university a few days later, and I was really, really worried about him going to university when I was poorly.
Sure.
And I remember actually sending an email to his tutor just to forewarn them.
Have a bit of empathy towards, look after him.
Yeah, which when I think about it, I think, well, I'm shocked that I actually even thought that way. Because my thoughts were all over the place. But I think that's when you're a mum, you do sort of think about your children, don't you? And how it might impact on them. And, when you're the person that has that issue, yes, you're not very well, of course you're not, but it greatly affects the people who love you and are around you, your friends, your family, your partner. And I think that was very, very difficult for them all.
And then maybe not talking to each other too, worrying individually.
Yes.
And knowing that each other's worried, but not actually voicing that can be an issue.
Yes, I think for Paul and Barney, I think Barney sort of buried his head in the sand. Didn't really get the enormity of it. My stepson Will he talked to his dad about it. But,
okay, that's good. That's good.
And Paul was kind of, he had to be this strong person.
Yeah.
And deal with because obviously I wasn't well enough to deal with things that were going on.
Yeah.
And it sounds ridiculous, but things like you are so drugged up with painkillers, you can't go to the toilet. Mm-hmm. That in itself is incredibly painful. And, you don't know what to do with yourself. Your body is just completely messed up with all the medication, etc.
I never thought of that. And am I right in saying, because obviously they've been in there poking around, so they've obviously touched and affected other sensors and other parts in the brain. So as well as being muddled up with drugs, you're actually cognitive would be muddled up until that all settles back to where it should be and heal. Yeah. So as you said, your motor skills, like physically just going to the loo or getting yourself dressed and things where you needed support.
Yes, very much so. I mean, I think initially I thought, because I was in a bed next to somebody who just seemed to spring up out of bed and was fantastic. I thought, that's going to be me. I'm just going to have my operation and I'm just going to wake up and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, it'll be sore for a while, but I'll be okay.
Yeah, but I'll be fine, yes. But no, that wasn't the case, because this has been going on now for nearly 10 years. And it was really strange because I had lots going on the side of my body where the brain operation had been. And technically, if there is an issue, it should have been on the other side of my body.
Ah, okay.
But so the surgeons and etc. couldn't understand really why I was having all these issues. They didn't really relate it to the brain surgery to some extent.
Yes.
Although, they did say it could be that, but they sort of hadn't come across this thing where it was on the same side as the brain injury. So it was things like numbness, tingling. I couldn't get my balance. I used to walk like a puppet. I couldn't coordinate my legs properly.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of fatigue, which is very, very normal for a brain operation.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So I think it must have been probably 8 months or so before I went back to work. And possibly in hindsight, I think I probably went back too soon, because I tried working from home as well.
Yes.
Prior to going back properly. And in fairness, the school I was working at, they did make adjustments for me.
Yes, good.
Because I was like head of learning support. So I used to spend some time in the classroom and some time managing the staff. But they were really good in that they thought, well, it's probably not safe at the moment for Denise to go back in the classroom, so she can just work in the office.
Great.
And I could adjust my hours and things,
Yes.
which was incredibly useful. But as time went on, I was getting more and more fatigued and more feeling unwell. So after a period of time, I kind of realised that I wasn't going to kind of get immediately better. So I had to go off sick again. And eventually I had to retire on ill health. And that's when I started to have more sort of mental health issues, because I couldn't accept that I had to give up work.
That's very natural. I can understand that.
You know, because for me, from the age of 16, working has been me. That's what's been my life, really.
Yeah.
And I've always loved to work.
And pardon the pun, but that's a mind shift. That's a whole...
Yes, it is.
Another emotional, massive change in life.
Yeah, it is.
So it's difficult.
Yeah.
I understand that, yeah.
So really, I mean, yeah, I've had lots of mental health issues. I've had to see the neuropsychologist. I've seen counsellors, a variety of things now. So I'm on lots and lots of medication, which I don't think really helps my situation.
Sure.
You know, because there's lots of side effects from that as well.
Yeah.
And I think
one will affect the other and so on.
Yeah. And I think my problem has been I'm always looking for the cure, as it were.
You're researching your own symptoms, your own life
and loads
to
of
control.
research.
It's
Yeah.
looking for some control back.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah.
Really, and your independence and back to being me. Being you. I get that.
And that's what they often would say to me. You're probably not going to be the old Denise, but you're a new Denise, and you've got to learn how to live with that and manage that, which I have never found particularly easy.
No.
And I think, in all honesty, Pat, I can say, I think I've finally reached that point where I have accepted. And I think part of that was because over the last year or maybe 2 years, I can't remember exactly when it was, but I finally got a diagnosis of fibromyalgia.
That one I know. But we'll come back to that in another conversation.
Yeah, it's not a nice thing to have, is it?
No.
And although I got the diagnosis and that made me feel better, because I thought, well, I haven't been imagining it.
Yeah.
These things are genuine. They are happening to me.
Yeah.
I then found out that really there isn't a cure for fibromyalgia. It's just a case of trying to manage things.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what, you know, one of the first things I did was to come off the pain patch, because that's the advice. Painkillers don't really help. I was drugged up with painkillers. So I have managed to do that. I wouldn't say the pain's any better, but it's not got worse.
No.
So I'm off strong painkillers, which is a good thing.
Good. Well, I'm going to wrap it up, but can I ask you, can we have a round two? Can we have Denise having because we've touched on the aftercare, how you've changed, the new Denise from the old Denise. the mental health side of it, and the fibromyalgia.
Yep.
Would you be willing to come back and we'll continue talking more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. No problem, Pat.
Thank you.
And I hope it helps anyway, in some way.
Definitely. I would like folks listening to send me messages, ask questions, and we'll try and answer them. But I am eternally grateful for your openness.
No problem, anytime.
And sharing and just telling it how it is.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic. Thank you, Denise.
No problem, Pat.
Much appreciated. Talk to you really soon. And you continue to be the new amazing you.
I'm trying.
Thank you, Denise.
Thanks, Pat.
Bye-bye.
Bye.